In this episode, there are 5 items to find. 3 for the staff, 1 to be the key, and 1 to be the pathway. Welcome to Castle Shadowgate. You're gonna need a notebook for this one. Developed by ICOM Simulations and originally released for the Apple Macintosh Home Computer, Shadowgate is a horror-themed point-and-click puzzle adventure game, part of a series of 4 black and white games known as the MacVenture Collection. The other games in this set are Deja Vu, Deja Vu 2, and The Uninvited. I have been absolutely obsessed with this game series lately. The original games are all available on Steam in all their grainy black and white glory. Unfortunately, these games have not aged well and are pretty difficult to get into in this format. Luckily for me and other Nintendo fans, the entire collection, with the exception of the Deja Vu sequel, Deja Vu 2: Lost in Las Vegas, was eventually ported over to the NES in beautiful 8-bit color. In my opinion, all these games look and perform superior on the console over the PC, and that's a statement you don't hear much anymore in modern days. Anyway, so far I've only been able to get my hands on Shadowgate and Deja Vu, as The Uninvited is unfortunately out of my price range at this moment. Yikes, look at that price. These games all share a similar layout that definitely feels familiar from game to game, but each one of these games has its own unique setting and ambiance to it, and that makes it fundamentally different than either of its sister games. Shadowgate is a titan in ambiance and detail. There are so many little details in this game that in no way aid you, but they add substantial depth to the game. Shadowgate is a very story-rich game for the time. Shadowgate takes place in the fictional land of Calzathan in the world of Tiragon. You play as a king-turned-knight sent by the wizard Lakmir to Castle Shadowgate to stop an evil warlock from raising the dreaded beast Behemoth from the depths of wherever. Let's assume hell. This game has a lot of trivial details about the world it takes place in that the game would have been just as fine without, but it added tons of beautiful detail just because it could. Because the amount of data that could be stored on an NES cartridge was quite limited, games that wanted detailed story content would often be forced to give the player that information via the game manual. This is not the case with Shadowgate, as Shadowgate can kind of feel like a book sometimes. Through the text displayed on your notebook display, the entire game's text-heavy story is actually on the cartridge itself. Speaking of notebook, how Shadowgate and its sister games are played is very unique for the NES. The entire game is from a first-person perspective, and the screen is divided into 3 sections. What your player can see, your list of items and spells to the right of that, and lastly at the bottom, a selection of actions where you choose how your character interacts with the environment. Each new area you are presented with is unique and has its own unique puzzles to solve. Your options for the combination of actions you can take is really quite vast, between the objects on stage, items in your possession, and the list of commands available to you. Rarely is the correct action you need to take obvious. Shadowgate can and will take every chance it can to deceive you. Here is just a short list of the shenanigans I faced when making my way through this game. There are countless dead ends in this castle. You'll be led to believe maybe you're meant to come back and explore that area later, but no. In reality, these areas are either impassable and pointless, or they're just another death trap. There are tons of bottles laying around, but out of all of them, you only ever actually need one. The command list can be very misleading as well. The hit command is only used correctly twice in the game, neither of which times is to hit an enemy. And the speak command never needs to be used even once, not even to NPCs that you actually speak to, like this bizarre-looking sphinx that refuses to let you pass unless you can answer one of his riddles. The list of 8-bit trickery just goes on and on. Shadowgate is a game that really forced me to think, and use a walkthrough. I'm not proud of it though. Most of this game is trial and error, and you're going to be spending a lot of time looking at that game over screen, and that's just how it's supposed to be. This obviously is a game that was unleashed on a pre-internet world. Castle Shadowgate does not give up its secrets easily. Figuring out the solutions to puzzles in this game is tough. This game was absolutely designed to be played with a notebook and pen, and you would be wise to do so. Every scroll you open, every sentence you discover is an important clue to the overall solution of this sprawling puzzle. I should note that there is a feature where you can press start for a clue, but for the most part it's completely useless. This feels like a cruel tease because a functional hint button would have been a great help throughout this adventure. Excuse me, MacVenture. It's a great thing that this game allows players to save at basically any given point, because you are going to be killed suddenly very often. Playing through this game, you will get very used to seeing this image of your in-game sidekick, the Grim Reaper, so remember to save often. To sum this review up, making your way through Castle Shadowgate will be very tough. You'll need wits, common sense, reasoning skills, handfuls of torches, and a hefty chunk of luck. You will need to solve riddles, some logical, others ridiculous. Some aided by a clue found elsewhere in the castle, but some of them not. Looking up walkthroughs for this kind of game just kills the thrill of advancing through them. This is an old school adventure game, the kind that was meant to be mapped out manually. Shadowgate is an absolute labyrinth, a grand puzzle, thoughtfully crafted to make you think both critically and abstractly. It's time for that part of the show where I'm going to rank Shadowgate somewhere between 1 and 715 on my list of greatest games for the NES. In case I haven't conveyed my feelings clearly yet, I really love this game. Shadowgate is a wonderful, timeless game. I'm delighted that as far as this game goes, my only real complaint, I guess, is that point and click doesn't convert well to console, but I can easily look past this for this tasteful gem. Out of the handful or so of games that I've reviewed so far, Shadowgate is hands down my favorite. I have nothing but praise for this glorious game. For this reason, Shadowgate will be stealing the spot of #1 greatest game for the NES, for now. But I have a feeling it will stay high on the list. I could talk about this game all day, but I've rambled long enough. Shadowgate is a great game that aged gracefully. Even though Shadowgate is a puzzle game with set solutions, it manages to retain replay value because the solutions and puzzles are so ridiculous in this game that you'll never remember how to do everything right the first time. Thank you for indulging my haphazard NES side project. Click here to watch the newest episode of my main show, Two Guys Decide, or click here to just watch a whole season of it. Or click here to subscribe.